Welcome to Meet the Candidates. My name's Eric Crump with the Homewood-Flossmoor Chronicle. Today we're talking with Brian Driscoll, who's running for his third term with the Flossmoor Board of Trustees. Brian's going to talk a little bit about the priorities the village has in terms of balancing infrastructure needs, especially with flood mitigation and streets. He's also going to talk about the increase in prioritizing business development and support of small businesses, and the need for the village to be fiscally responsible. Brian, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Eric, and thanks to the Chronicle for doing these interviews.
We're glad to do it, and we appreciate you being here. And we want to start with the easy question, the softball.
Okay.
Why did you decide to run for re-election?
Well, it kind of ties into why I decided to run in the first place, because it's still my motivation. So 8 years ago, there was a housing bubble, and Flossmoor was hugely affected. Most people's mortgages were underwater, and besides that, we had foreclosures pretty much one or two on every block. And the administration at that time was not kind of owning up to this ongoing problem. And because, quite frankly, maybe they thought there wasn't much they could do about it. In my day job, I do employment litigation. I've done it for representing municipalities throughout Illinois, including City of Chicago and Joliet, very small municipalities. And I also represent employees, municipal workers, definitely police and fire, and the state police throughout Illinois. So I know a fair amount about municipal issues. I have a second job where I'm a municipal hearing officer in the south suburbs. So at the time, I was at South Chicago Heights and Steger as their hearing officer. And in that capacity, I saw that those towns were handling their foreclosed properties way better than Flossmoor was doing. So I brought these ideas to candidate Gigi Gumberson at the time, and she's like, "You know what, you're running with me." And I said, No. I don't want to get involved in municipal politics. Anyways, long story short, I won. Gigi lost, and Paul Braun and the board very shortly thereafter worked with me, and we changed the ordinances in Flossmoor. So now, if you have a foreclosed property, at the bank, we're going after who's got the money interest in that property, because that still matters. We go after the bank, they have to register with the village, pay a fee. Now our code enforcement and police can keep an eye on the property to make sure you don't have people squatting in those properties, which was a huge problem and still can be a problem, as we know, in the village. Once they get in there, it's very hard to get them out. So to stop that ahead of time, it's on everybody's radar. And thankfully, right now, our mortgage future is good. We still have a few, but down considerably. And obviously, our housing values are up now, something like I want to say 40% since 2000. So we're in a much better position, thankfully. But those types of ideas, I think, is what led me to when I saw that Flossmoor should be leading the way. But if there's a good idea that you learned somewhere else, then we should bring it to the village and try to implement it.
So you feel like you had an impact right away, so that's what kept you in the game, huh?
I was going to say, it wasn't right away. It took me, I think I'm not going to name names, but the village attorney at the time never returned an email or a phone call when I kept trying to do this. It took a long time, but eventually Mayor Braun worked with me to do this, and we got it done.
Now you've had experience on the board for 2 terms. What has that experience taught you that you could bring to a third term if you're reelected?
I think just working, contacts with the community. When I first ran, one of the complaints was, well, nobody knows you. Because, even though I coached both the kids for, their entire baseball career, in Flossmoor baseball, member of the church, the local church community and so forth. I did a lot of charity work. I guess my name wasn't out there. So now, 8 years later, I know kind of civic leaders all throughout Flossmoor in every neighborhood. So I think that's better to build bridges to whatever the message is, whatever the issue is, to people are not shy about sending me a note, knocking on my door saying, I've got a problem with X. How can you help me with that? And usually we can help get to the problem right away and try to get it fixed.
Yeah, I've noticed at board meetings you do bring up things you've heard from residents as to make sure the board's aware of them. So that actually brings me to a question that I was hoping we could talk in a little more detail about, and that is that communication between the board and the residents. It seems like no matter how much you do, there's always a need, right, for keeping people included in conversation and making decision-making. And, with some of the issues we've had in the past year, some residents felt like they weren't getting the word on, like the Heather Hill Detention Basin was one where I know the village did a lot of work on getting the information out, but there were still people who didn't get the word and didn't feel included. And I wondered if you had thoughts based on that experience and others you've had about what the village could do differently to get more residents to be included in conversations and know what's going on.
I guess, the best voter is an informed voter, right? And, it's kind of late in the game to have, it's not helpful. I didn't think that, we had members from other boards come forward and with their engineering suggestions after the game is already done. So this is a done deal. We don't have a magic fund of $5 million to now re-engineer the thing. And it's, quite frankly, they're not engineering experts. So I'll leave that aside. But for the average citizen, no matter where it is, I just think we have to be aware moving forward. We had all sorts of committee meetings. We had neighborhood meetings. We had board meetings over there at Heather Hill to discuss that. And they send both, they'll send staff and trustees to those various board members. So when we started on this project way back in the day for the referendum to raise money, I remember I visited both the HF school board and the library board to get that informed. So the boards are informed. Theoretically, they're informing their constituents about it, but it's not necessarily. So you have to go beyond that. We use the media, we use the website, we use mailings, door hangers in case of a referendum, to get that information out there. With respect to that one issue, I think it became a bit of a political issue, and then some people might be using that, for their own purposes. But I think generally we're doing a good job. We can always do a better job.
Yeah, it's a never-ending task to try to reach everyone, right?
Right.
Somewhat related. I mean, that was an infrastructure project, and it was a big demand on the part of the community to do something about flooding in the neighborhoods, right? And so that's what that's designed to do. And you're balancing streets because the streets need help always. What do you think about the priorities going forward about balancing all those infrastructure needs? We've had a lot of big projects just in the last couple of years, including the basin, and more coming. So what would you say about the village's priorities going forward and what the community should know about infrastructure projects like that in general?
Well, they're long-term, obviously. We're a small community. We don't have a big manufacturing base. So we've always had a save and spend philosophy. Make sure we have the money up front before we do these projects, and hopefully our costs stay somewhat fixed. With respect to ongoing projects, obviously the basin's the biggest one. And just to go back, Eric, a little bit to kind of tie that up, streets were the biggest issue 8 years ago. And the residents in Heather Hill would come every night about these horror stories, and they were, about the flooding in their neighborhood. And, as a board and the mayor at that time, while we've got the referendum passed for the streets, quite frankly, this needs to be addressed now. These people they've had this horrible flooding there, and it has to be relieved. And so we shifted the priorities to do it twofold. And it worked, and it worked like award-winning engineering program for the phase so far for Heather Hill. But of course, what a lot of people don't realize is that's not a permanent solution. The permanent solution is to make sure that water is kept away, even in bad flood situations. So I don't know if that wasn't communicated to. It seemed like everybody understood at the time, but it became, when it's all of a sudden, when we were putting the basin in, it became more of a deal. Like, we didn't know that. Well, I think everybody did, but it's okay because it's going to get done, and we're not, because those folks, after all the rebuilding they did and everything else, all of a sudden they have more flooding, they're not going to be happy. And I think generally the people there were less affected. And I think a lot of people thought there was going to be, this, taking away green space and taking away tennis courts and playgrounds. It's already back, right? So, and I think the projects are going to have the, kind of the native plants and things like that in the basin. When it's done, I think people will be very excited. The other big project ongoing, of course, right now is the downtown Flossmoor streetscape and build out for the sidewalks. It is going to look 100% better. People, it looks kind of ratty right now. But, it took a long time to have consensus on what to do. Do we get rid of the circle or teardrop, in the middle of town? Everybody's like, well, that's iconic Flossmoor. We have to keep that. So a lot of discussion, and we had a lot of executive meetings on exactly, how much more do we want to pay over budget for, say, benches and these things. And we know we really enjoy downtown Flossmoor when we can do the concerts and things like that. So I think everybody's going to be pleased when we're done. It's going to be safer because we'll have the build-ups for the, still school children go back and forth there, and it can be dangerous. We've had accidents there. So now the school children will be safer. It'll be much easier, closer walk for them, and it will slow traffic down there as it should have been a long time ago.
Well, safety was kind of
Correct.
what pushed that project forward, wasn't
Correct.
it?
Yeah. Without and hopefully not taking away too much parking, because that's a big concern for our business. And at all stages of this, all the shareholders were brought in, or stakeholders, I should say, were brought in. All the downtown business people, engineers, green committee, everybody's had their input before we made the final decisions on that. And I think that's important in any infrastructure project.
And you brought up another topic I was hoping we could get to. The small businesses downtown and in Flossmoor Commons primarily all have a stake in this project, but it's also makes them nervous because some of them are, not that it's a struggle anymore to run a really small business. They were a little worried, this might cut down on business and would be a risk to the viability of some of them. But you did bring them in, and I know they had a lot of input into how this is going to go. And I know that the contract is going to stipulate that the businesses can stay open the whole time.
They have, yes.
Sounds like
yes.
you listened to them. But I was also wondering if we could explore more what the village's role is or can be in helping those small businesses thrive. I know there's
Features,
limitations, but go ahead.
Well, I grew up in the south suburbs, but I've been in Flossmoor for close to 30 years now. I mean, my daughter was born. She's in visiting today. And so this weekend, I should say, she flew in. But when Flossmoor almost had like a disdain for business. I want to say growing up, we don't need that. We're just a bedroom community, and we shun business. There was no Flossmoor Business Association when I was first elected. And maybe there was one, and it was defunct. So you look at how robust that is. I don't know. I know now that our staff attend those monthly meetings. I know trustees go to those meetings, and it's got vibrant leadership now, and they have a big say on any of those fests and things like that moving forward because it directly impacts them more than anyone else. So I think we're in a good spot with that. I think the village does a good job, and I think trustees do a good job in promoting the local businesses as well. We can always do more with that as well.
Yeah, but mainly helping keep the word out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And the other side of the business community is attracting new businesses, which is, like you mentioned, it was not always a priority, but has grown as a priority in the last few years. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what Flossmoor is doing and what else they could be doing to bring in more business to the community.
Well, one thing we've done, we hired the consultant for the businesses, and I'll just say, no disrespect to prior administrations or anything, but this mayor's work on economic development has been like on warp speed compared to like years past and what is coming down the pike. Obviously we have it's public about the luxury condo development in downtown Flossmoor, which will have a cafe, and we actually have, retailers fighting each other, bidding to get in there, which is, positive. And I believe the rising sea raises all boats, right? If we get more in there, it's just like I think Homewood has seen a lot of that. They might come for pizza over here, but they end up saying, next time we come back, I'm going to go pizza over there, that kind of thing. And I think that it really works with the station, with the bistro, Dunning's, and I just think that you're going to get more and more people with that kind of attitude. I think it's all positive. So that's on downtown Flossmoor. Volmer is we're about ready to go on some major development there. That's been discussed. It's not, the ink quite isn't dry, so I don't want to be premature in announcing things. And then, but we're talking multiple outlets there, and they make a sizable retail tax impact on the village. That's important for everything, to keep our property taxes down. It's a balance. We're always fighting Springfield mandates, unfunded mandates. I can give an example of that, but I just I like to do PSBA because I did a lot of work on that for some towns, writing their ordinances to how to set up the administrative hearings for that. So PSBA is Public Safety Employee Benefits Act. It's a great thing in concept. A first responder is catastrophically injured on the job. Then the municipality is required to pick up the insurance for his family for life. Well, you know what? It seems like that's a bargain that we'd all want to make, right, with our first responders. In reality, of course, we have court interpretations down the road. A first responder has a chronic knee problem and has to have a knee replacement. By court definition, then, they qualify for these PSBA benefits. That is not funded by the state, and that can be, as you know, of a small town, that can be a huge unfunded mandate of several $1 million over the course of the deal. So we always have to keep a check on Springfield with these things, unintended consequences of this legislation. Nobody disagreed with that going in, but down the road, for small municipalities, it could be a deal killer.
That's and I know they're always facing those kinds of issues that have local consequences and how to deal with them. I know the lead line replacements coming up will be another big one. So that and you've mentioned a couple times the need for business development. It helps keep property taxes in check. And that's been a big problem, especially gotten a lot of attention since last summer when the bills spiked. In addition to bringing in more businesses, what do you think the village can do to help with the property tax situation? Because I know your share of it is small, so you really can't affect the bills in a huge way. But is there more you can do to help?
I won't pick on my school board friends, but our budget's much less. We don't have, we do not have, 5 of 20 million laying around that you could just throw at projects. We have to plan and spend very carefully. Going back, one of the things, I think one of the best things we've done as far as for the village is the switching over our water from Harvey to Hammond. That was just unsustainable raises every year, kind of the whim of the administrator from the court, what they said their cost to upgrade the infrastructure. And that project looked scary. I mean, it looked like it was going to cost us $5, $6, $7 million to get everything done. Our responsibilities. I think we lose. I think sometimes, some of my opponents might lose sight of the fact of what our responsibilities are. Number one, our responsibility is to the taxpayers. To provide the best police, fire, public works, and then the suitable financial accounting for all that. That is our job, and we do that job by and large better than most of our neighboring communities, and we have to continue to do that. That is our main job. So. And that affects, I think I said like 8 years ago, every decision has to be made with the home value in mind. But it's a combination of the home value and the taxes.
They go hand in hand.
Right.
Total cost to taxpayers, yeah. Well, thank you, Brian. We've talked about some of the big issues facing the community, the economic development, infrastructure, taxes, housing. Are there things we have not talked about that are really high priorities for you that you want to make sure that the voters know about?
I think just that. I mean, I think sometimes, let's say we don't tout our own horn. We don't do the get up there and say, look at what a great job we did. But I think just point out that we have done we've done a great job collectively. This is a board and a mayor. None of this is made, with bits and pieces and stuff like that. And it turns over every couple of years, as you know. So it's an ongoing commitment to the community, which I think reflects Flossmoor as a whole.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being. Yeah.